Hey folks, this is a video response to Andy's Vinyl Den, a wonderful channel that is celebrating 200 subscribers. I've been enjoying the videos on that channel a great deal, and I'm glad to put in an entry into this contest. Andy has asked for 10 perfect albums. I have 10 albums that I believe fit that bill. They will span genres ranging from jazz to country, rock, blues, and metal. So let's get started. A couple days ago I was watching Mr. Hall of Fame and his video response to this contest, and one of his selections was John Coltrane's Love Supreme. What a perfect album. My favorite jazz album of all time. But since he has shown that album, let me show a different album. In the early days of my jazz education, I used to watch BET on Jazz, and they played this video that's the opening cut from this album. It's 1959's Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. So BET showed the video that's the opening cut. So what? That video featured Miles Davis and John Coltrane tearing it up, and I just had to go out and get this disc immediately. What a great album. If you're making a list of essential jazz albums, if Love Supreme is number one, Kind of Blue is probably number two. Miles Davis was a great visionary and composer as well as trumpet player. His compositions, he often left a great deal of room for the musicians around him to play. There's probably no one that used the space that Miles created better than John Coltrane. Their chemistry is absolutely electric, and this album is definitely a perfect album for that. So the first album, 1959's Kind of Blue, from Miles Davis. My second album, from 1990, probably the best songwriter you probably haven't heard of, but it's the self-titled album, Rick Elias and the Confessions. This album is a rock album, maybe with kind of a Heartland rock feel to it, but the strength of this album is definitely its lyrics. Rick Elias is just a world-class songwriter. He penned all the albums, or all the songs on this album. There's not a weak one on it. Definitely a very, very underrated album, Rick Elias and the Confessions. The next album is from 91, and it's from my favorite singer, my favorite vocalist, probably the best singer that's ever walked the planet, Russ Taff, Under Their Influence. This album is a collection of songs, kind of not quite a tribute album. Basically what Russ did with this album was that he pulled songs that he grew up with, old gospel songs, old blues songs. The whole album is a gospel album, but spans from the songs span from blues to gospel. That's what he grew up with. He was the son of a Pentecostal preacher, so a lot of mainstream music wasn't allowed in that household. So he drew a lot of his inspiration from the albums that his mother had, and so he pulled that together, together with James Holohan, who played guitar on a lot of his albums. They came together with a strong collection that even included one original. And between Russ's voice and James Holohan's brilliant rock guitar, this album definitely is perfect. I could listen to it all day long. One of my favorite albums of all time. Russ Taff's Under Their Influence. The next album comes from '93. Again, the musical style may be a little bit hard to describe. It's probably folk with some pop sensibility. Not quite Americana, though the instrumentation draws heavily from Appalachian instruments such as hammered dulcimer. But it's 1993's Rich Mullins, a liturgy, a legacy, and a ragamuffin band. Every sound on this album is well crafted. You can even hear the intent of the sounds that they decide to play, coinciding with some of the lyrics. The lyrics are absolutely brilliant. A very influential album, and Rich Mullins on this album started pulling together some of his musician friends, so it's kind of an all-star band almost. Rick Elias played on this album, Jimmy Abeg, but this is 1993's Liturgy, a Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band. Absolutely a perfect record. The final CD that I'm showing comes from 2001. This is a country album. This is country music the way that it should be, and not the CMT version. From 2001, Buddy and Julie Miller. Buddy is a brilliant guitarist, and his voice is as country as it gets, and that is such an awesome thing. He sounds authentic. He doesn't have to sing to you about how country he is. He simply opens his mouth and you know it. Julie is a world-class songwriter. Her songs have been covered by a great deal of musicians. If you have gotten a taste of their music through acts that appear on CMT, it's because their songs are often picked up by folks like Miranda Lambert and Leanne Womack and folks like that. Should talk a little bit about Buddy's guitar playing. He is a brilliant musical genius. He has been a band leader for Emmylou Harris. That led to Robert Plant picking him up for a Sounds of Joy tour. And he also served as the musical director for the show Nashville. But this album definitely, I believe it won Americana Album of the year that it came out. It definitely a lyrical and musical masterpiece, Buddy and Julie Miller. And that's the first five. Now we'll go to vinyl for the second five. First up, I believe from 1979, Bob Dylan, Slow Train Coming. It's one of his gospel albums. Again, not a bad song, front to back. I don't need to really tell you who Bob Dylan is. This particular album probably has my favorite Bob Dylan composition. Gotta Serve Somebody. Love that song. But there isn't a bad one on it. It's Bob Dylan, Slow Train Coming. The next album is from 1997 from one of my favorite rock bands, DeGarmo and Key, D&K. Again, not a bad song from front to back. D&K is probably in the middle of their discography. At this point in their career, they were rocking pretty hard. I don't know a whole lot more I could say about it. It is a great rock album. Dana Key, his guitar playing is probably, while he can certainly string some notes together real quickly. His playing is probably more blues based than anything. He'll bend a note as quick as he'll show off with a run. Eddie DeGarmo, keyboard player, brilliant. Can't say enough about this album. Probably saw him on tour for this album 2 or 3 times, and they tore the house up every time they played. So that's D&K from DeGarmo and Key. Let's see here. Also from 97, we have Audiolow, Tribal Opera. Now this is a unique album because the album is really the project of Mark Hurd. Mark said when interviewed about this album, he said, I decided to put a band together. Just so happens I'm the only guy playing in it. This album is a little bit of a departure from his usual projects. Mark's music, I think, it would typically be more acoustic oriented. Kind of, some of them are more folk oriented, maybe even, and some a little bit more rock oriented. This probably is a little bit more rock oriented, but it's more electronic than anything that would probably come in under his real name, Mark Hurd. But Audiolow was a brilliant album. Every song on it's good. There's some Beatles influence that you can hear in some of the choruses. Just a tremendous album, and that's Audiolow, Tribal Opera. This album, I should mention, has a little connection to the Rich Mullins album, Liturgy, a Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band. Rich actually covered Mark's How to Grow Up Big and Strong on this album, and it came from the Audiolow. Originally came from Audiolow, Tribal Opera. So I believe I have 2 more to go, and now we get to the metal. I believe from 92 or 93, my first selection from the metal genre, Tourniquet, Psychosurgery. And I know what you're thinking, but Dale, that album has a rap on it. Well, I happen to like that rap. This album is brilliant from beginning to end. You can really hear Ted Kirkpatrick's classical influence on this album. Yes, there is a rap on here. I thought the rap fit in brilliantly. Love the almost flamenco guitar on Devastating Winds. Just a tremendous album. Tourniquet Psychosurgery. And this last album may be it may be kind of an odd pick, but I'm going to go with it. You know, when I was thinking about perfect albums, one of the albums I thought about was Stryper's Soldier Under Command. But I thought I can't really go with that album because it has that one ballad. Not that ballads are bad, but if you're a heavy metal band and you're jamming along and all of a sudden you stop for this little ballad that sounds like you're tinkering on a toy keyboard, that's a little less than perfect. So for my final selection, I went with Stryper, Fallen. To me, this is the band at the apex of their creative powers. There's not a bad song on this album. The one slow song sounds like it fits. Michael Sweet has never sounded better as a vocalist. They play as well as they ever have. They're not slowing down any. To me, I can drop a needle on this anywhere and love it. And tremendous great songs, or tremendous opening song in Yahweh. So I'm going to go with it. Stryper, Fallen. Maybe a little bit presumptuous at this point. Maybe it hasn't been around long enough to kind of establish itself as being a perfect album. Maybe I'm being a little influenced because I saw them in November at the Mercury Ballroom and they absolutely tore the joint up. Yeah, I'm going to go with Fallen. So that's my 10 perfect albums. I tell you what, I hope that you'll, at the end of this video, if you have anything to say about the choices, we'll get a conversation going down at the bottom. I try to answer, well, I try to answer all the comments that I get. And I think at this point, off of 3 videos, I've gotten a half dozen responses. So, but I do look forward to the conversation, and hope you will. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.